Right. Good evening, everyone. I call this December board meeting to order. It is 5:30. Let's all stand for the pledge and a brief moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. First item is to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
First and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The safety minute and cool moment, Brett.
So for safety moment, it's the holiday seasons, so time to reconnect with family and friends. Kind of what we always talk about when we talk about safety now in our safety culture is, any hazards that are, our crews do basically tailgates every day. Anytime they're doing a piece of work, they sit down before, they go over what hazards are here and how do we mitigate those hazards. So I kind of saw this and thought, well, everybody ought to be thinking of through the holiday season, what different hazards they may be coming across and how you mitigate those from a safety standpoint. From a cool moment standpoint, we had our IEC annual meeting. Chris Galloway was graduated on being a Relight graduate. So if you guys know, that's a 2-year program, pretty elite program that he committed himself to. Made it. Paul Camp also. Paul was actually a graduate of what they're calling the advanced lineman training. So we determined a couple years ago, complacency is a real issue in our industry. And some of the older guys sometimes don't get that, just kind of look back to the basics sometimes. So they created an advanced lineman training program to really just kind of reinforce the basics that sometimes you don't get to see every day. So Paul was actually a graduate of the first class that graduated out of IEC's advanced lineman training program. So it's kind of nice to see him up there. And then last, we had a youth, so there was 5 Youth Power Award recipients this year. And so if you remember last year, we had 2. This year, we still had another one. So I think Miley Shutmer. So her and her dad came up and received the award. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Sure. Are they offering the advanced lineman training program every
Every year now. Yep. That was the first one that Paul's a part of. Yeah, it's every year.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda then is for your information. Now's the time to ask any questions related to any of those documents.
Is Matt going to be here?
No, I let Matt off because I figured today was pretty light. So
Okay.
I gave him a holiday day.
This recorder, power monitors recorder on the Amex, was that a CapEx deal for facilities that we had a 24 budget approval for?
No, I don't believe we ended up CapEx in that. So what it is, actually today we had a link out on one of the mills out right past the intersection here. You guys can imagine who that is. And we've been fighting with it for 8 to 10 years. We just can't find where it's coming from. It comes in spurts. Every once in a while you'll get 2 or 3. So and it's not going through as a fault to our substation. So if it comes through as a fault at the substation, we can measure the fault. We can get a good idea of where it's at, right? Or we can put some fault indicators on. So it's not showing up as a fault. I'm just giving you an example why that piece of equipment was purchased. And so because it's not coming through as a fault, it's tracking, it's something that we're not being able to see. We've written that line out for multiple years and just have not found out where it's at. It causes them all kinds of
So
problems.
they're having some kind of blink.
They're having a blank. So this piece of equipment will essentially, you put it on the line and it will give you the same readings that you would get at the substation. And so you can actually see how much fault current there could be possibly there. And then it'll allow you to measure back how far on the line you need to start looking. So it's within like 10-foot accuracy. And so then we can go back, pinpoint the areas and figure out exactly if there's an insulator bad, which is what we're suspecting. We just can't find it, right? Sometimes you get hairline cracks and you just can't see it. And so that piece of equipment was purchased for it, and I'm about 90% sure, I'll get back to you. I'm about 90% sure that we did not CapEx. That was an expense item.
And then my only other question was, Ian Engineering, did some work towards fiber. So like 50-ish thousand. So how is that gonna work with the grant dollars? Like, we have to,
Did you say did spend?
EN Engineering,
Okay. It's a trust.
but, okay. So how will those dollars work as we move forward with grant money? Like, we pay all the expenses and then how's that?
We'll get reimbursed on that. So essentially what we'll do is any qualifying expenses, which that one definitely without a doubt will be qualifying expense. We will actually submit all the invoices to, and then we get reimbursed. And actually, so Next Level just opened up like last Wednesday, their reimbursement cycle. So we could actually start getting reimbursement any day now or anytime.
We'll have to front those expenses and then they'll all be reimbursed.
So it's all reimbursed. Have we put in our request yet?
Or,
ARPA,
no,
at the end of the year or when will?
no, we're probably looking at beginning of February, middle of February.
But it's cut off as of the end of the year.
The end of the year, no, you can still spend in the next
So
year,
I'll tell you the request.
but essentially the requirements is they're only going to give it to you at one payment. So that grant is for literally one payment. They're going to reimburse us the 500. So we decided we wanted it to go to things like interest and stuff, the things to help us get the grants, because that's why it was wrote, right? And so all those bills will be through to add up to the dollar amount by, we think, probably the beginning of February. And so we're going to trickle it over and capture that money next year. Jason, did I answer your question? So we probably will not ask for any funding from NLC. My guess is until we light the first person up, because that's when we could do it earlier if we need the money at that point. But our plan is if we don't, when we say, okay, we're going to capitalize all this and start amortizing it and bring it over to the income statement, that's when we'll actually start getting reimbursements. Unless we need the cash early, then of course we would go ahead and start bringing it down. But as of last Wednesday, we can actually start submitting those invoices. There's a bunch of paperwork you got to do. Did I answer that?
Read page 3 on the check register toward the bottom, the payment to American Express for a balance. What is on the check, for page 3 of the check register?
3 on the other side. No, that's just to pay our American Express bill.
Previous month?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So you guys will see all the American Express charges every month. And then
I did see a check on
we check for that, and that'll show up on the check register. And then he sees all mine on this. Any additional
Questions? Any additional questions for Brad?
One more clarification too. So you're going to see two files. I should probably name these on there so you guys can see it. On the check register, there's two files there.
Yes.
One of them is for, what do you call it? There's two different accounts there. So they used to be combined. Giselle used to do it. We cannot figure out a way to get it to run combined like she was doing it yet. So for now, I'm just submitting the two. It's the same exact information. It's just two different.
It's just split apart from what normally would be one.
That's the part you were asking.
Right,
about.
last month,
Yeah. So it's general AP, one account, the general AP.
Any additional questions? We good to go on? Yes. All right, so the next item is the approval of the last two meeting minutes, which includes the November board meeting, along with the special board meeting related to the budget that we just had last week. So we can make them, we can approve them in one motion. And if there's any additional changes that anybody's seen.
So moved.
For both, correct?
Correct.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say. All right, so the meeting minutes from the November board meeting and the special meeting that we had a week ago. All right, Brad, the CEO update.
Sorry, you got to deal with me on the financials too, but I think I can do it. All right, so updates from my standpoint, just go over kind of the strategic projects. One thing I would like to note at the beginning of this is the first year in a few years that all the projects that we had committed to you guys in beginning of February, everything is closed out except for pool replacements, which is about 95%. We got about 15 more pools, which shouldn't be a problem to get done. So that's the first year in a couple of years that we executed to our plan very well, I felt like. So work management was one of those projects. It got implemented. We still got some work to do, just kind of making that process really, really efficient. But the work order and service orders, automated processes in play now. And when I say efficiencies, things like the process allows you to actually submit work orders electronically, and they'll actually go to the guys' iPads. So instead of us printing out work orders and shuffling papers around, the guys will actually be able to bring these up. That's the one piece that we still have left. And then obviously getting all the statuses and all that reports created. So pool replacements, I just talked about that. We're about 95%, probably a little bit more than that. We got, I think, 15 pools as of this morning to complete. So honestly, that's about 3 or 4 months worth of work. And then I wanted to give a BEAD update real quick because we did hear some information on BEAD. One, they are going to open it up December 30th. So good news is that it will be open the 30th. The deadline will be the 15th. So we're already ready to pretty much go. The requirements don't look like they changed from what was originally proposed. So we're going to be switching from focusing so much on design, make ready. Another group from Entrust is going to be involved here getting us set up. So that's the first piece of information, the 30th through the 15th. The next piece of information, which I think is very, very important, and I'm going to actually show you. This is the map. If I can get it in here. So if you guys remember, we challenged so all the green dots are the areas that are served or underserved. Those are what you can get grants on essentially, right? Grant money for. If you remember, when we originally looked at the numbers, it was like 400. And so what we found is a lot of those were watch, which we know the technology watch uses isn't going to match what is required to be considered served. And so we challenged those, and we've always been in kind of waiting on hearing, did that challenge go through or not? According to the maps, that challenge did stick. And actually, so if you remember, we thought the number would be right around 2,200. And right now we're sitting at about 2,500 addresses. So if we do the back of the napkin math, and this is very back of the napkin math, we believe there's about 15 to 16 million in these addresses that we're going to apply for in BEAD. We got 5. That puts us at 20 to 22 million dollars on our 45 to 48 million. So we feel very, very comfortable that we're in really good shape, as long as we get the grants, obviously, to meet kind of what we said our business case was going to be. So Dale, we're one step closer to
Sam's guarantee.
Sam's guarantee. That's
We visited that last Thursday, sidebar conversation.
Any other questions on any of the other projects or anything from this year? Anything from BEAD? Literally, these dates just came from an IBO workshop or WebEx an hour and a half ago. So we just found out these dates an hour and a half ago. Go ahead.
I don't know when, but this response that you sent to us regarding the question was brought up last month about the funds that were committed from the county. Yeah, I didn't know if you were planning to talk about that later.
No.
I need to know what the plan is for the response, because the response you sent, I thought was like sent to all of those guys, but it wasn't.
Yeah, no. So we put together a response. The question that came up last month, or the question that Jason had brought forth from someone in the community, was we obviously got the grant that we got out of the 6 grants was a grant that is Ripley County, Decatur County. So the question was, are these grants going to the builds in Ripley counties, even though they're grants from Decatur County? And so if you guys read the response in there, the answer is that grant that we got, the ARPA grant that we got from Decatur County, was specifically wrote in order to help us write for the grants. And so we wrote for the grants. We're still, and for BEAD too, right? So BEAD, I just told you, is opening up. And so it was not to build anything. So none of those ARPA grants are to build or to any basic like capital type stuff. And so the answer is we're using that money to apply for BEAD, and we use that money for Next Level. The 1 out of 6 that we got for Next Level just happened to be, and I showed you guys the numbers there, but I think it was like roughly like 604, little 450, something like that. So there are more addresses in Ripley than Decatur. That's just how the grants came out. So that's our official response. I suggest 2 things. 1, I can reach out to him and kind of go through that. But 2, I am planning on going to the ARPA meeting in January, because I haven't got a lot of feedback on everything that I've submitted. So I've been submitting basically bi-weekly reports saying, here's kind of what we spent to that grant that we got. Are you guys okay with this so far? And I haven't got a lot of response. Basically what I'm getting is thumbs up, looks good. So I'm going to actually go to the meeting, make sure that they understand exactly what we're doing, where the spend's going, and I'll probably go over that response there too. Although I'm pretty sure the committee is well aware of it. And I don't think the person that talked to you was on the committee, but I'll go through that response. But really that response was for you all and for our communicators to know how to respond if that question comes up. Did I answer your question?
Well, I mean, are you going to reach out to him or?
I will. Yeah, I think it'd probably be better if we do. But again, if you read that grant, that ARPA grant, it was specific on here's dollars to go get as many grants for Decatur as you could possibly get. And so it just happens that the grant that we got serves some of Ripley too. You see that?
The 3 projectors will shut down. It's standby mode.
Stand by. Okay, if not, I'm gonna go ahead and move. You ready? Yeah. For metrics. All right, so back to November. As far as the metrics, you can see November was quite warm. It's actually about 11.5% above our 5-year average. And as Steve pointed out, that really impacted the HDD. So there wasn't, you can see that kind of fell off. And yes, that number is correct. We just had a lot of warmer days, believe it or not, in November, which did impact our sales, as you guys can see. So there's our overall sales. KWH was down about 7.5%. And then if you look at our demand was pretty close, but it was about 4.1 under our 5-year average. So obviously the warmer temperatures did affect us. But if you look at our retail sales to budget, this pretty much tells the story as to why if you look at revenues and that stayed in a pretty good spot. It was really because transmission being well above, commercial being well above, but residential's where you typically see those seasonal weather type moves. So it doesn't surprise us from that standpoint. But all in all, pretty normal what we've been seeing. So where we've ended year to date, we went from 1.47 to 1.29. So depending on how December ends up here, will depend on where we end up for the year. But actually being 1.29% to budget coming into December is a pretty damn good place to be, I would suggest. Liability, really the big blip you see there was the hurricane remnants coming through. It was a pretty quiet month over November. You can kind of see that in our lost consumer hours below our 5-year average. And then the number of outage trending below our 5-year average also. From a safety standpoint, we always look at these. Our total for crew visits were 6 this year. I think we actually picked up another one yesterday or today. So we're probably I know we're at 7 now. And then if you look at our corrective actions compared to near misses, a pretty good year if you would look at it compared to last year. Having 17 actual near misses or safety suggestions that come through the safety committee, and then taking corrective actions on 11 is a pretty good number for a year. Any questions from a metric standpoint? Good. All right. If not, I'll go through the financials. So again, period ending November 30th. So I'll start with the balance sheet. So our net utility plant basically flat. If you go down to total other property investments, that's where the A's at. We're down about 3.7, which is about 673,000. That's really offset of Hoosier capital credits. So we got both Hoosier capital credits last month. So those were both booked under that. Total current and accrued assets, that was up about 17.6%. Basically what that tells you is we had more cash coming in than going out, right? Largely contributed to the capital credits from Hoosier. And then like we've been talking about, the other deferred debits, which is that 28.9 C on there, that's where we're booking all of our fiber stuff too. I move over to the statement of income. So from a month standpoint, our operating revenues are down about 2.3%. So if you look at, try this, for the month, we're about 3.1 compared to 3.1. So we're down slightly. And then our power costs have followed. So over the year, we're about 1.4 on gross margins over what our budget is, which again, that's actually a really good spot to be in. Move down to our controllable expenses. So we're under about 215,000, which is about 3%. And what's interesting about that is of that 215%, 214 of it is job openings, right? So we obviously have one that we're not filling, and then we've had a couple where there was months where we didn't have a position filled. So we're going to end the budget, in my best calculation right now, probably around $200,000 less than budget, which is going to be less than 1% on a, $5 million budget. And all that's going to really be related back to labor, just the open positions. So in a good spot from that standpoint. Then if you look at our gross margins, we're going to be about 252,000 to the up. That's really, again, it's from gross margins being high and expenses being low due to the labor I just talked about. And then our lovely, what we've been booking from as far as bad debt stuff is down there, 242. That's what we've been talking about from the audit adjustments that we've been doing month over month. From a cash flow statement, kind of like I said before, we had more money coming in than going out to the tune of about $911,000. You can see up there, which left us with cash about 1.5 right now. So all in all, coming in December, I think we're in really, really good shape. Then I'll end on the plant investments, and this is a little tricky because it's really how we did our budget compared to how we're trying to book things. And I think what it brings to light is we actually had a meeting today with our operation folks, and it's making sure that we get things in different buckets. So if you guys remember the distribution work plan projects, which is about roughly $1 million, there's a big proportion when we actually did the budget that made up that $1 million, probably another almost 300 to 350 that got booked as a service upgrade, right? So our service upgrades are actually way down from budget, but one of those projects up below got booked down below. And it probably was in our budget. We should have probably brought that down below because it was a service upgrade. It's the one out south. And so from a distribution work plan, that's why those numbers kind of look different. The other thing is we put 4 of the distribution work plan projects on hold. Johnny got here, our new operation manager, just because he wanted to get his hands around it before we spent it. So that's kind of where we end up thinking we're going to be. There is still quite a few projects to come through. You guys know how it is. We're going to get a bunch that come in December and towards the end of December from our vendor. So there'll still be quite a bit of spend that's going to go on here. Questions from CapEx standpoint?
Any?
All right.
I think we're good.
Kind of a boring month from a financial standpoint.
Sometimes
That's probably not bad.
That's okay. So that takes us into old business, and the first item for old business has to do with the budget. Kind of stemmed from the budget meeting that we had. And
And through the changes I made.
certainly, I wanted to make certain though, everybody was aware that Brett sent an email a couple days ago, I guess it was, to kind of go over a couple of asks that we had, and he had made some modifications based upon those asks. So he's going to review those now, and then we'll see if we can get through the budget approval then.
So what we ended up doing is if you guys go underneath there, I put the PDF out that has all the changes. We didn't go through all the narratives because the majority of that stuff didn't change, but we went ahead and updated the major financials. But the changes we made, so we were asked to take out $500,000 out of our CapEx budget. So where we did that at is we removed 20K from our general. So below, we removed 20K of that. We took our meter pole project down from 96 poles to 50 poles. And remember, those aren't pole replacements. We're using pole replacements because it's a close number to what we spend when we replace a meter pole. Ideally, we're not putting in a pole in there. We're having the member go to a pedestal. But so we went from 96 to 50. That gave us 124,000. So you have the 20K from general, the 124 from the meter poles, and then potentially we're saying we're going to remove 3 of the projects, 2 to 3 of those. The idea is we're going to work from the top priority to the lower priority. And we have some stretch goals out there for our operation folks to try to get them for better cost than they came bid in at. So that's why I didn't want to come in and say, hey, we're cutting these two projects and here's the name of those projects and what they are. What I gave you was two projects that are probably going to have to be cut because we're cutting because of the impact of the 500. But it could be one, depending on how well we do with the other ones. So we cut out of those three projects, it's $356,000. So they're definitely, out of the 8 projects, there's definitely going to be probably 2, if not 3 projects cut from those. And then we took the architect out, just knowing that we'll come to you guys when we get to that point. So it ended up being $560,000 that we took out. I asked Steve if the 60,000 for the architect got to be part of that 500. He told me no. So
You're right.
Good answer.
he was quick to say that. So that's where we got it from. And then everything you see, the borrowing basically kind of moved that same amount. Obviously the net utility plant came down to about that amount. I don't know that there's really anything else to show you. And then you can see those equivalent amounts on the plant. But I mean, the major impact is on plant investment sheet, which is in your guys' call to order.
And you left the right of way at 1.6.
Oh, yeah, right away. We didn't change anything in control. Yep. And by the way, we've got bids out now for all 3 of the New Point.
Okay.
Circuits. So we're going to use it as much as we can for those circuits. Those circuits are important because we're doing fiber there and it's our next year's. So, and Jason, we are working on updating that 8-year plan according to the new 3-year average of cost to see what that looks like. I believe it's going to go down to a 7 pretty easily. And that cost will still drop off like you see it today.
We keep hoping. I've been hearing that for a long time.
So based upon the board's discussion after the budget review, I think Rick covered pretty much everything that we had talked about. Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss?
Yeah, Brett, the pay increase for the employee something, what would be the average percentage? I mean, is it 2%?
3.5. 3.5.
And if I'm not mistaken, we did approve that portion of the budget. You know,
You did, but
Yes.
yeah. It's a fair question.
Sure.
And just to clarify on that, that is definitely an average. So there's going to be some lower and some higher.
That was non-union, right?
That was, yeah,
That's non-union.
union was.
Yeah.
4.5.
Is there anything in the budget about the parking lot, getting it resealed or painted lines? Wasn't there a couple of years ago?
We're holding off until, yeah, we did it. I bet it's been around 6 years ago.
Okay.
We're holding off because possibly as part of, one of the mitigations we've always talked about doing is putting handicap parking in the front here. It's on the side and you have traffic that comes through and we've had some near misses on that. And so our thought process is while we're doing the building, if we do the building in the back, that's probably when we would propose to do those, put some pavement out front. And if we're going to do that, then we would seal the whole parking lot. So we're trying to put it off, but you can definitely tell it's getting close to decent.
So yeah, a lot of those lines are pretty faded and yeah,
Plan is to wait until we figure out what we're going to do. We figured 1 more year is not going to hurt much. Good question though.
So based upon those changes that we talked about, I'll certainly, unless there's any additional questions, entertain a motion.
Make that motion.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any additional discussion at this time? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. It's unanimous. Which has been approved. It's part of the, including the changes. Yep. The next item then, under old business, has to do with, we talked about this last month, donation sheriff. And I believe, there was another email response, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so essentially what we got back from legal is, no, your risk is very, very minimal by making that donation. But if you decide that you do not want to make that donation, they want to look into it further. In other words, we haven't had the time to get the information. Plus, it's going to cost us a little bit more in legal. So I said, hold off until because I'm not sure they want to stop it. I just think they wanted to know, is there liability if we're paying that donation? The answer is no. There is possibly some liability, and she wants to look into it further if and when you guys say we don't want to make that donation. And what that really comes back to is you have an agreement. It does not have a timeline on it, which I can't believe at that point in time you made an agreement, which was way before me, but to pay this, and it has no end to it. And so, and you got some state agencies involved. So we would want to look into it. If the board's desire is we don't want to do that anymore, we probably need to look at that more from a legal standpoint. Your desire is we want to keep doing it. We just wanted to know what the legal ramifications were by doing this donation. The answer is there's very minimal.
Yeah, but under that, I mean, what you just described, there really is no exit for us. Even if we did decide that there may be liability if we decide we didn't want to do it anymore.
Well, we would want to make sure there could be. The answer is we don't know.
But I mean, we can't just say, yep, no, we're not doing that anymore. That's what I got out of what
If
Aaron
you
said.
want to say we don't want to do that anymore, my suggestion is let's go ahead and get legal to do that next round to see, don't make that motion today.
Right.
Let's let legal do that work. And then they could come back and say, well, we've done this and yeah, you do have some legal liability.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but it seems like everyone else that was involved in this has walked away
A
from it.
lot of them have,
Here we are with it. Are we, so we just have that.
Or are the legal charges to get out of it more than what we pay a year?
Yeah.
That was my thought after I read Aaron.
and it could be for.
Legal charges to get out of it are probably more than what we're paying.
I would tend to agree with you.
So that was
So
my,
we just have to do it forever.
that was my thought.
Was there an action?
I'm not saying forever, because forever is a very long time.
But there is no end.
Agreement.
We paid for it.
Not a very, it doesn't have terms and conditions. It doesn't have length. It doesn't have, I mean, I think what Aaron's going to tell you guys is if you want to get out of it, we need to go talk to IDEM. We need to go make our rounds and say, hey, look, we believe this agreement is old and we're no longer, we got to do that due diligence if we don't want to do it anymore. But I do tend to agree with, I mean, it's going to cost us a penny to do that.
To get legal, to get.
To keep them on, do we need to go for this?
And, if I'm not mistaken, the first few years, the dollar amount was not a lot and it's creeping up. I mean, maybe not significantly, but what's the board's feel? Do we want legal to?
Legally put a cap on the max that we will pay.
Well, I think then you're back to the same deal.
Is that illegal? I mean, could we just put a cap on it? I know they made it indefinitely, but indefinitely we put a cap on how much it would be per year. I mean, that's a totally different avenue of coming in.
My guess would be that unless that cap was a condition of the initial agreement, I don't know how you could cap it at this point.
Yeah, but you could make the argument, to Suzanne's point, I could make the argument too, though, that the agreement didn't say, well, it does say half though, doesn't it?
I think so.
I thought it was a simple amount, but it wasn't.
It seems like a very bad deal.
Kinda.
I don't like being in the position where we can't say no. Like,
I think you can say no, it's just you got to realize there's some legal risk there. That risk is probably not that big.
I mean, there was
for no more.
a very long list of people in the community that were involved in the closure of this and that were involved in sharing costs, and they've all walked away. And here we are left with
And were there any ramifications for that? You know, we don't know. Would it make sense to ask Karen if there's such a thing as an estimate that she, you know, that she.
This, or I could
would
go,
spend
I
on
could go to
this?
Wickens with this, the rest of this. And I can have Wickens take a look at this and.
Regardless
It's
of
not a
what,
big deal. Maybe we just keep paying it.
I mean, forever's a very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're good, but that was my first thought for this year. I mean, I'm not saying forever, but once I saw that and I saw the email, I'm like, well, our legal charges are probably what we're paying this year. Is there a cap
Yeah.
max we can put on there? And or what?
We brought this up before and it just
perpetuates. I mean,
keeps going and it gets kicked down and, you know, we don't do anything about it. And maybe that's okay. I don't know, but I don't really like being in the position where we don't have any option.
we really don't know. I mean, you know, I would tend to think at some point we're going to need to get some legal advice. If the consideration is that we want to.
And maybe that's the idea. Maybe you do use your local resources and to investigate a little bit. What are the board's options if they decide that they do not want to do this in perpetuity?
We say no.
Okay,
But what's the
But what's-
financial
what-
impact?
what's the ramification of that? That's what we need to know. We're gonna pay it this year, right?
I think that's a given.
It's the liquid damages of the dollar amount, in my opinion. So if you get sued based upon
It's gonna sue.
I do.
item, one of the parties that were on the agreement originally could sue and say, you have to pay the liquid debt. It would be the cost that you're going to pay. It's the cost that's on that sheet, right?
So we're just gonna continue to do this.
It's the $1,700. I mean, if you really want my opinion, I would, if you feel like you want to stop doing it, I would give an indication to them that we're going to stop doing this in year X and go forward. If you get sued, I think you're going to pay legal fees and $1,700 for however many years you didn't pay.
But is,
That's your financial, I mean, it's liquid damages. There's no other,
but is that $1,700 in perpetuity?
could be, yeah. I mean,
I mean,
maybe 10 years from now.
I mean, that's.
What could be creeping up by, because it's the cost of what that pump is to run. So the price is gonna continue to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not stay 1,700.
And to me, the only recourse anybody else would have would be, in this case, I still participating in the ones that have walked away, I wouldn't think have any recourse, but IDEM, I would think would. Would there be any potential negative public sentiment about us
Absolutely.
to get out of it?
I think there's definitely negative PR that goes along with this.
So that begs the question to me, is it worth $1,700 per year?
How much positive PR do we get if we're doing this?
Or does anybody know we do it?
Yeah.
Who knows we do it?
Yeah.
We're not ever.
We know we.
But
We
that's
put it in our
the
meeting.
conversation started though, because of what is happening to the stuff that's coming out of there that has been filtering back to me through the community and our participation in that. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, no, it was a great question.
I don't think that it's a positive PR thing. That's why I asked. So Aaron answered,
There's zero here now, right?
We don't do anything with this. It's in the
He
meeting.
knows that he,
And-
besides us sitting here.
and Aaron did what we asked. She looked at it. She doesn't feel like we have any liability by participating in it. So,
So Jason, are you suggesting there's negative PR right now based on what you're hearing?
yeah.
Okay, and then I just heard Brett say that if we were inclined to want to sever this relationship, that's negative as well.
Well, I think at that point, the county's got to go find it's going to hit their budget.
Anybody else? Yeah.
No, they're just going to pay for it. So now you got more people involved in trying to find, which it's $1,700. I mean,
You did what I asked.
well, I know that.
I mean, I just wanted to know what kind of liability we were looking at and you answered the question. Aaron answered the question.
And it doesn't sound like there is, but I think as a,
I'm good with that.
it doesn't have to be tonight, you know, if we want to consider the option of her doing some additional legal work or local, that's some legal work.
Does Brett's suggestion of having local counsel look at that have any appeal to anybody? I mean, I'd like to know a little bit more at a reduced hourly rate if we can.
Yeah, I think we need to know it's at some
I
point.
think we're gonna have to know more.
Well, it's the same deal. We just keep.
Otherwise, the can's gonna continue to just get kicked.
And I don't know, but maybe we can remember some of this originally. I don't know.
Thanks. I don't want so Drew.
I mean, I would have been around his time frame.
Yeah, yeah, but whether he had anything to do with any of that.
But I mean, Aaron did bring up some other questions that we should be asking in her response.
Yeah.
Not related to the liability.
Yep.
Related to the agreement that probably are worth at least us knowing, right?
Agree. Plus, it's a course of action to get to know if that's where you or another board wants to go. Because it's just gonna come up every year.
Right.
Did you talk to IDM?
Nope.
You know they're paying their half.
Okay.
And another thing is, when this all started, wasn't that a different ownership on that landfill?
So the owner of the original landfill was the reason there was an issue. And so they did a big remediation where they basically had to line the whole thing.
Mhm.
And then this pipe is getting all the leaching out of it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the county owns it now.
But just because we pay $1,700 a year on their electric bill, we're liable for something like that? If something leaks?
No, the email said,
No.
No.
So would the board like to wait and consider legal to find out more at a later time, or you want to follow through with that? This meeting? Make that decision? Because it will come up again.
It's not like,
This would be nice to know if there is a way to at least put a limit on it. Right now, we're just going,
yeah, to limit it or terminate it or something. I mean, my fear is if
what are we gonna do if the 1,700 turns into 17,000 someday? You know, it's,
How many years have we already done it? It's been
Wasn't
over
that
20 years.
Wasn't that 2003?
Yeah.
2003 is what I remember.
That's what I remember.
Documents.
That's 21 years, and that was 300 and some, if I'm not mistaken. And on that year.
Do we know what the cumulative amount is that we've forgiven over that period of time?
No, but I could get it.
Why don't you get that if you would, please? My only reason is if we don't take some sort of action, even in the form of discovery,
I agree.
we're going to be no better off next year at this time than 2 years.
Sure.
Because if we want to then, as Suzanne suggested, try to limit it, we're at least going to know what our options are. Right now, we don't know anything. So if there's an appetite for that, I'd be in favor of having local counsel. I don't know if the rest of the board is comfortable with that.
You're making that decision tonight? I can ask them.
It's just
To
that,
find out
It's
what
just
our options
exploration.
are moving.
I know there's a little bit of
forward.
money involved, but
We don't have to make.
we've got to make an informed decision. And if we don't do something, we're not going to be any more informed the next time we address it than we are right now.
So am I hearing that local legal work on this is something that the board would do? What I think we maybe need to make a motion to support that.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
So we do have a first and a second. Carl, we have a first and a second on getting local legal work to to do some research regarding that. So we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the same. All right, so we will pursue that. All right, the next item then has to do with nominating committee candidates.
You don't need to bring him until January.
Right, but we'll ask how successful everybody's doing. You do have?
I have one, Joe Dekoff.
Okay, I was gonna see
I
if you,
cleared it with Jeannie. I sent Jeannie a text and said, would you just please verify that he's, because last year he couldn't because of the term situations.
right,
Jeannie cleared it for me and I reached out to Joe and he's
willing to do that.
so I need to find another candidate. Now, we still have to have a second, correct?
That's our,
That's our desire or goal, whatever. But yes, Joe is going to run.
I'm not sure when he ran, when was it, 2 years ago, if we actually had a second one on that.
Yeah, I don't know. We were.
Okay. How about you, Suzanne, have you,
I've asked 4, I've had 1 no and 3 maybes
okay, so it's still,
by January.
bring it back in January.
I just need to confirm it. There's one, I'm not for sure what district, since my district's changed a little bit, so I
Sure.
need to confirm my districts.
Okay, and Steve,
You know, so
who
far.
knows so far? Okay, well, we'll bring those running, next month. Next item from old business has to do with, board. We had
Update your call to work, because I put a few more things in there.
Okay.
Right before the meeting, actually. So there should be a new memo that comes up. And I can read through it.
Okay.
So just to let you know, he wanted a commitment by the end of the year, but the cash call actually is going to be January the 13th. And then the form is actually due February 3rd. So that's kind of the timeline. So they're looking at year one. You can do one or two things here. You can pay it all in year one. That commitment is due February 12th of 25. Or you can spread it over 2 years, which year two, the payment date would be February 12th of 2026. So the pieces of information here I'm trying to give you is it starts in 13. They kind of wanted a commitment by the end of the year. When I say commitment, that's just a verbal of like, hey, this is what the amount we're going to do. But the actual cash call doesn't open until January 13th. It's due by February 3rd. So those are the pieces I want to make sure everybody, as far as timeline.
Everybody have an appetite for you. I know we've had some discussion. I'd like to hear if anything's changed. Dale, I'll start with you.
Thought it was a foregone conclusion that the budget reductions we made, we were just going to shift over here. I maybe have more appetite than some of the others do, but I think it's prudent on our part to do something. When I look at our fiduciary responsibility and I look at part of this as an investment. And, you know, we need to spend some, we need to save some, we need to invest some. To me, this is an investment and I'm inclined to do it. I don't know if you're looking for an amount from me or what you want.
Well, I just want to get an idea. I think you've given me that idea and then we could talk through the amount, once, you know, see where we're at. Jason?
My question is, the examples here, like the first one is 100 and it says 50, but we already have a $10,000 investment with Accord. So would we actually be doing 90 in addition to the 10 we already have to make it 100? That's my question.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think these were.
This calculation is what I guess is what Jason's asking.
This calculation is just based upon $100,000.
So,
Yeah.
but the 100,
So we should have more in there than just 100.
If you give 100, it'll be 110.
but the 100 is the 2.5 equals the 14.7 million. 100 total.
Correct.
So we would really do 90.
Correct.
In that example.
Correct.
My take on it is a small investment possibly just as an extension of our fiber project and just to support the fiber network in the state. That's really, not as I guess I'm looking at it as an investment in the fiber, not just in standalone investment, I guess, if you will.
I just want to follow up with the question that you did have though. That 100K, that's a 0.59 ownership. If nobody else does it,
No, that is, so it is based upon. It's, I'm not sure I understand your question.
So you're saying that their cash call, whatever they're asking for, they get it's funded the full amount and our share is 100, then our ownership is 0.59%.
is that fixed? Is that,
How much?
all I'm saying is that based upon anybody else's input?
No,
It's not?
No.
Okay. Then,
it's based upon the 5/8 though. So if they don't get 5/8 or they get more than 5/8, then yeah, it's going to change that number. So
But it's based on 100% 100% securing the additional cash call.
correct.
And if we were to put in the difference, that we were at that level, we would have the 0.59% ownership.
Correct. And that changes. So if
Right.
if they only get 4, then that percent's going to be different because then we're only 100K into that.
Of a smaller number.
Correct.
And the only other thing, I feel like this is a very small investment to have the potential to pay off our entire fiber project if this works out. Like that could almost pay for our fiber project
Yeah.
Get close.
if this
Like
works.
a big bite.
Pay off.
Good,
It could.
potentially,
And if it doesn't,
maybe.
then we have $100,000 investment in this company that we're gonna get dividends on. Right? I mean, we're gonna get dividends on this if the company doesn't sell. If the core doesn't sell, we're still gonna get dividends on the investment.
Well, and that's if you go to that level. You can go above or below. I mean, there's nothing that says these presented levels is where we need to be.
True. Yeah, it could be less.
Yeah. And that's to kind of jump at what I hear Suzanne about. I heard a comment earlier, I understand being cautious. We need to be.
Brian? Your appetite?
I don't know. All depends. I would say more just like 50,700.
You would say what? You would say what?
I would say 50 total.
And so based upon that question, this commitment since we could 2 years?
Do it too.
I mean, do we have to make the commitment of the total? Is that the goal by January 13th or whatever that date was?
You will have to know your commitment level and what years you will pay it. And it doesn't have to be half and half. It doesn't have.
Right. But based upon, I mean, Brian said, maybe you'd be okay with a total of 50, is that what you said?
You could do 25.
Right. And your thoughts?
I'd probably tend to more lean on what Brian's saying, looking at what the email that there was applied, what Russ, Shelby and Jackson more in line with what they contributed. I think it's one of those things, if it goes really well, that would be great, but there's a lot of unknowns. I know Matt is for it. I know we talked as far as being the CFO. Just investing money in the unknown
Tough decision.
brings a lot of caution.
Especially when it's not your money.
It's not our moment, it's the members' money, and I probably err more on the cautious side, but I probably wouldn't argue with what Brian just proposed or discussed.
Carl?
Well, if we invest anything, we could look like geniuses, or we could look like.
Well, good point.
And that's about what it amounts to. And then the same token, you bring 100 people and ask this 100 members, would you do this? Probably 50% of them say, yeah, we ought to invest. And the other 50 are going, wait a minute, you're cautious, you're not getting, So it's a catch-22. More like what Brian is, just little, start out with, or else let's go to Las Vegas. That's about what amounts.
And if it starts to excel at doing well, I'm sure they're not going to say no for us contributing more. They're not going to say, oh, no, you only committed this much, don't commit more.
They may offer another cash call later. You know, you don't know.
It's very hard to say.
Called speculative.
Somewhat.
Yeah. But you,
I mean, I agree with everybody else that, invest in something like this. I think it's a benefit. Dollar amount. I'm kind of mixed. Somewhere between, what those guys said, between the 50 and 100 is probably where I would be. Is this basically just investment? This won't affect any services that we're getting out of this? I mean, if we stick with the 10,000, we're going to benefit from being in accord.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
that-
we're a member whether we're the minimum or the most.
For now, yeah, but who knows what that could be a year from now. I mean,
When we were in IEC, we talked to some neighboring boards, directors, and we talked about Accord specifically. And one of them did tell me that they did get some towers, some cell phone towers on their fiber
Did or
network.
did not.
They did, that they would not have gotten without the involvement of the board, without working with Accord. So they were, but they're also pretty heavy investors in this too, but they did share that with me.
There's another note at the bottom of this memo too, that talks about the potential additional strands that are not included as well. So there could be some potential payback there without any additional investment.
So aren't we already committing some strands?
not yet, no. Because we're not sure. I mean, right now, no, because the area that we are granted, they don't necessarily need built out.
But that line that weren't they running a line through a search?
Way up to center sub, so we're not building all the way to center sub.
But I mean, by our participation in Accord, we were able to direct that line. We had some input on that.
We still could. They haven't built that yet. Ideally, when we get BEAD funding and continue our efforts here, we would direct our lines for our regular fiber build to connect what they need connected and where we have to go anyway. And then those strands we could put towards Accord. Yes. That would be a perfect scenario. Yeah. And I'm sure there's going to be, look, in a year or two from now, with all the middle mile that's going on, I'm sure with the rest of our network, if we build out the entire network, there's going to be other lines too that they're going to need to get the cell phone towers and other things. So there's a potential for more strands that we could, but it's hard telling how many and where.
What's your thoughts, Steve?
so,
I thought it was going to be
Steve.
I think I mentioned at the last meeting, I had a very long discussion with James Denberger and of course, it's his baby, so to speak. And, he just, all the right things were said. I think it would behoove us if we didn't do some kind of investment. He gave me an example. I won't go through the whole scenario of somebody that he currently works with, but that when they had the opportunity to do something, and I don't remember the specifics, they did it and it just. Yeah, so many doors. And so I think we have to consider that. Again, the dollar level, if you bring it down to cost per member as well, I don't think going 100K would be unreasonable, but the board doesn't have an appetite for that either, I understand. So to answer your question, Suzanne, I'm
So you're not for sure yet,
What?
Said you're not 100% sure on the amount either.
No, I'm giving take. I would like to go though, I think to that level, but that's, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's room.
And to that point, when I sat here, when you first asked me, in my mind, I was thinking, because I thought, and I made the comment, I think I have a higher appetite than some others do. I was thinking the level you're suggesting, but in anticipation of trying to get a consensus, I was going to suggest the level that Brian suggested, which is perfectly fine with me.
Okay.
I'm just of the opinion that, number one, I think we need to be in. And I would ideally like everyone, I'd like to be a unanimous vote on the amount that we're in on.
Okay.
And I'm willing to vote, as long as we're in, I'll
Sure.
vote at whatever that level is within reason.
And we
So
do,
if
we
it's
do
40,
want your
that's
payment.
fine. That's not making sense.
Can't spread it across more than the 2 years.
Where's the funding? I don't know.
If we did 25,
35.
25 and 25 for 2 years, it's not going to affect our cash flow.
And I personally am perfectly fine with that. I would consider going, but again, I'd like every.
Right, you want.
You could view it like this too. So we captured 80K for our hometown investment this year. And I'm assuming next year will probably be closer to like 60. So you could say you're just transferring that investment. I mean, you're going to use that investment money to pay for another investment.
But to Suzanne's point, if it goes well, then we'll go, dang, we should have. And if it doesn't,
It goes back to Carl's point.
yeah, I mean, you don't know. And
Either look good or we don't, you know?
Hey, we don't look so smart.
you have to be frugal. You know, it's not our money. That being said, I think it's a tremendous investment opportunity.
Mhm.
And then I'll supplement it even further with what Jason said. It contributes to decisions we've already made. It's very supportive of broadband and things that we've already been exploring. It's not like it's an outlier that's sitting out here in left field that's not going to have any impact.
Sure. So I think sounds to me like most everyone's supporting it. It's just, we're not sure maybe what dollar value to go to. Pardon me?
I think we have a minimum and a maximum.
You want to, I'm willing to make the motion for 50. Additional,
Total.
25 and 25, if the board thinks that they will support that.
I'd second that.
We have a first and a second. They want to. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Oh, same. Yeah. You're,
I'm okay.
okay, good. So that's what we'll go with.
Great.
All right, continuing on, under new business, we have some voting delegates that we come up with. And are all these at the NRECA meeting?
All of them but the CRC.
So, do you have to be present at the NRECA meeting to participate? Is that what I gather from that? So I guess we need to find out who's going to the NRECA meeting.
That one in Florida?
No, that's in Atlanta this year. It's usually, if I'm not mistaken, like the first week of March.
If you're going to go, I would highly recommend the hotel that the conference is at is the exact same hotel that Indiana is at. So it will go quick, and the early bird special is done January 8th, and it's huge savings. So if you book anytime after January 8th, it's way more expensive. And I doubt you'll get a room anyway.
So I'm registered and I'm going, but if someone else is going, I don't need to be the delegate.
Anybody else going?
I nominate Jason.
That was easy.
You're nominating, we can do the, I can't,
Let's see, the CRC one, you don't have to be, is that right?
are they part of this meeting? No, they're not. No. So are you nominating just for the two roles for the,
An NRTC.
Absolutely.
Yes.
you're nominating
Yes.
Jason? I guess we can. Nomination. We can close nomination. We close nominations. So Jason, you're in by.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. We will do the CRC one, I guess, separate. So we need nominations for the CRC one as well.
That one is male.
We should keep our same one, Brian.
Brian, will you do it again?
Yeah.
I'll nominate Brian.
Okay, we'll close nominations and Brian, you're in. We're good there? All right, we got through that pretty quick. We're ready for
2 years ago.
report out from affiliated organizations.
Hometown, we met yesterday and approved the new service agreement. Change the pricing to $239. It was $240.
250 something.
And the next meeting is in January.
Okay,
So that's a big deal to get those, because you remember the whole insurance thing that we've been through?
I didn't know how much I could say, so yeah, I'll let you take it over.
So the insurance issue that we had, and then the fact that when we had legal go through everything with the agreements of this joint venture, they suggested we needed these service agreements. So we've spent months creating these service agreements. We got them all done. We went down and met with Premier, finally came to some agreements, and we got those signed. So that's a big deal. And then while we were doing that, we've lost about 12 customers from Hometown this year, which is not usual. Usually you get one or two. We believe it's because we set our pricing before the rest of everybody else did. And then we started getting everybody else's pricing and we were way high. And so we had asked the board, hey, we think we've lost some customers here due to pricing. We can tolerate lower pricing. Let's just go ahead and do it. So we ended up kind of compromising a little bit. I think we came in at 220. We kind of agreed to be at 239 because we know there's some increases in gas over the winter months coming. So I thought it was a win-win meeting.
Yeah, I mean, that was their reasoning, is that they come from Summerfield pricing and then they ramp up all the way into January. So they're always raising their price throughout the winter. And we come out with a flat rate for everybody. That's kind of something that people like.
Yep.
I think knowing that it's not going to go up on them. So, but this year the gap was too high. So that's why I lost the people.
it was a good meeting. All right, Jason, Hoosier.
We had no Hoosier board meeting since our last meeting here. But Hoosier was rated by the S&P this last week and maintained their A+ credit rating. So that's really good news for all of us as ratepayers. So we're able to borrow money cheaper than some folks. Donna will be here at the January meeting. And it's to be determined whether that's going to take place here or off-site possibly. Is that still something that we're talking about?
We can talk.
Okay. So Donna and maybe Rob or somebody will be here for that meeting. And I'm running for the treasurer of it.
Excellent.
That would be
March.
so. That's really it. Other news from Hoosier.
Okay. And as far as the IAC board, we did not have a bi-monthly meeting. Other than we did have the annual meeting. And when we get to the next item on the agenda, we'll talk to you about. So no additional news. We'll have our next board meeting for IC is in February. which will lead us, in, as I said, into the next item. That we'll start with any director training. I know there were a couple of directors that were trained, and give us a item or two that came out of that. And I don't care who goes first.
Would you like to, Mr. Nobby?
Sure. So I attended a BLC class, Road to Resiliency, and board's part in that. There was a lot of interesting conversations about how the board is involved in just keeping the cooperative, resilient, and working with the members. Also attended the IEC annual meeting. Really good, liked it. I liked can't remember the keynote speaker's name. It was pretty good.
That was
Morris.
He was really good.
He was really good.
Easy one.
That was-
Morrison.
Yeah, he was probably the highlight of the thing.
I think
So,
most people.
I really like that.
All right. Very good. How about you, Dale?
I attended the same BLC class. Actually, Steve and I went up on that Sunday afternoon together. The road to resiliency, and the word that kept coming back in my mind was to echo kind of what Steve said, is adaptability. The things that keep coming back to you, and you figure out the way to back up, and you find a path forward to operate based on how the parameters you are now dealt that were different than they were prior to. You just keep, overall, you're forging forward, but you're constantly ebb and flow, tethering back and forth to just based on the different things that are presented to you. The other thing that the literature itself is fine, and I thought the proctor, whatever, did a nice job. But to me, it's sitting at the table talking to the different people from the different places around and just saying, hey, how, just getting to know some of them and having context. So found that very valuable.
Most of us would.
Very valuable.
Cool. As far as then, anybody else doing training? We're good. The IC then annual meeting where we shared something. How about you, Jason? Anything?
It was good, other than it got really heavy in politics, it seemed like to me this time a little bit. And maybe, I mean, that's not that unusual, but there were, of course, the governor-elect was not in attendance.
Right.
So they had some political reporters.
Journalists. They were journalists that were there.
Instead. And while that was okay, we talked about the electric sector for about 3 minutes of the hour and a half, which I found really disappointing.
That was the second day.
Yeah, was that the second day?
That was the second day, but
Tuesday morning.
but
So that was a little bit disappointing, but aside from that, it was okay.
a little blip from Governor-elect Ron did mention a couple things about it, but you probably talk more about it.
We had a pre-recorded message that they played at the beginning of the presentation, and it was, yeah,
He's positive. I think he's willing to work with, IC and the co-ops and.
yeah. But there were some things said on the panel about fossil generation, specifically coal-fired plants, that weren't really accurate. We're more opinion-based, that, and if you really hadn't been involved in the numbers behind all that, you really wouldn't know. So, but yeah, so that part wasn't all that valuable to me, but it was okay.
Sure. How about you, Ryan?
I guess, no, it's not one nobody's talked about yet was the safety guy, which he had kind of a different take on safety, and he had an interesting presentation, I thought, kept things fun and light. Yeah.
And the other speaker that no one's mentioned had to do with connecting across generations, and she was from IU, if I'm not mistaken. We we all have to understand, I think we see in our daily lives that generationally, we're all different, or we do things differently, I should say. Not that we're different, but we do things different. So from a marketing perspective for REMCs and what have you, you do have to do things different for various groups. So overall, I did think it was good. I know that I was involved in some discussion previously. It's been a 2-day event. But usually it's 1.5 days. It's over with at typically before noon. And it even gets a little more condensed. We had one meeting the second day, and then we had a director's chat. And by the way, we spent just a few minutes in there. There weren't too many that attended that, but it had to do with succession planning. And I think our board needs to we need to look at things just to make sure we're where we need to be on succession planning. But where I was going with the comment is that they're considering making this a 1-day event as opposed to 2. And I know they have a contract with, I think, the Marriott for another year or 2. So my assumption is it'll still be a day and a half. But there'll be some changes made for the IC. So that's all I have. Anybody else have anything before consider adjourning for the open session?
Yes. Steve, how many were there at our session? 60 on that BLC class on Sunday? Probably close to 60.
I've heard a lot of good things about that, them having that training on that Sunday. People seem to really like that.
Yeah, that's a large.
My only comment about that would be she had difficulty with her mic for the first third of the thing as far as feedback. So she was trying to posture and find different pockets that she could stand in without feedback. But yeah, there were at least 50, probably 50 to 60 people there.
Now, is that the first time you've been at the new building? Okay, I know I asked you about that, so I think it's gonna.
So driving up on a Sunday morning, there was no traffic.
So you didn't have to worry about the traffic. I can assure you, it's not always like that. So.
Yeah, don't go with Brett.
All right, any additional topics before we adjourn? And we are going to be going into executive session. So I'll take a motion to adjourn. Is that you, Carl? Okay, we have a first, we'll take a second. Yeah, okay, Brian. Return. We'll take a few minute break.